Morning everyone. I hope by now you've all watched the trailer for the book A Monster Calls and are feeling all that atmospheric spookiness that's come out of it, because that's going to really help with our writing today. Now, our second plot point, the one we're working on today, is about safe, familiar objects as time stands still. So Connor has woken up from his nightmare. Thrashing, shaking, heart pounding, all of that. And he's now just starting to realise where he is. Okay, so our first learning chunk, we're going to use a fronted adverbial, but it's really about time clues. Now, I've written all these different times up. What have they all got in common? What do you notice? They all mean exactly the same time, okay? It is 7 minutes past 12. And you could see it written in these ways and possibly others as well, okay? How do we know it's the middle of the night and not lunchtime? A, we can take a big clue from the fact that he was asleep in bed, but also it's AM, okay? It's before midday, so it's just after midnight. Midnight, right, that's always, I think midnight's quite a spooky word sometimes in itself, unless you put it with snack and you've got a midnight snack, not quite so spooky. But in terms of, you know, getting that fear going, that spine tinglingness, midnight's always a good word, so I might just jot that down so I don't forget. Midnight. Okay. Right, so I'm going to put a sentence together straight away. We're going to go straight for it today. Okay, now I want to get these time clues in, and actually they're going to be a bit more than a clue. I'm going to blatantly start with the time. And the reason I jotted midnight down is because I'm going to use it. So my sentence is going to start 12:07. 7 minutes past, and this is where I wanted my midnight, because actually 7 minutes past 12 could be lunchtime, you could be having a sandwich. 7 minutes past midnight. Okay, so we've got the time in there. Now I want a fronted adverbial. So I want to say something about time is standing still. When you wake up from a nightmare, you're in a very strange, or even a dream, it doesn't have to be a nightmare. You're in that very strange, almost limbo state. You're not sure if you're awake, asleep, if it was real, if it was a dream. And time doesn't really have any meaning. Time doesn't seem to change. So I want to convey that in our writing, okay? But I want a fronted adverbial. So I'm going to say about time standing still. But I'm going to start off with for Connor. So that's going to be my fronted adverbial. For Connor. Okay, because this is specifically for him. So I need a comma after my fronted adverbial. And I'm not going to say that time stood still. I'm going to say that time, what could I use instead of stood still? It dragged. You know when you're in a really boring lesson at school, not that you ever have any, but time goes on and on and on. Okay, it's like that. If you can't sleep at night, sometimes it can be like it, can't it? So time dragged. And you know I like a bit of alliteration. So it dragged desperately. Time dragged desperately as his heart so we've got a subordinating conjunction, we're moving into a complex sentence, as his heart pounded in his chest. So we're showing that contrast between time dragging and his heart boom, 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 pounding in his chest. and I'm going to say, I want to deepen this moment. I'm going to deepen it. It was beating. Are you still on my screen? Yes. Twice as fast as the clock. Oh, does a clock beat? I'm going to put another word in there. The ticking clock. 12:07, 7 minutes past midnight. For Connor, time dragged desperately as his heart pounded in his chest. It was beating twice as fast as the ticking clock. I'm happy with that. I like it. I've written it. I've read it. I've got my fronted adverbial in. I've got my time in. Okay, so your turn. Time to pause me. Time for you to do your independent work. There's no jotting for you to do at the moment because it's all there for you. So I want you to generate your own sentence. I want you to use the times to introduce it. And I want you to obviously put together your sentence here telling me what is happening. Okay? Okay, so you pause me and come back to me in a minute. Okay, you ready for chunk 2? Chunk 2 is we're looking at our sentence structures, and particularly we're going to be looking at starting a sentence with the ing part of a verb, which is actually called a non-finite verb. You don't need to worry about that, you don't need to know it, but that is what it is. It's just the posh way of saying an ing, really. Okay, so first of all, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to imagine you're going to bed. Okay, so for me, if I close my eyes when I go to bed, I go up the stairs and along the landing. Okay, then I do all my, bathroom stuff, clean my teeth, wash my face, all of that. And then finally, snuggle down in bed. And what I want you to think about is 2 or 3 things that can be familiar objects or aspects of your bedroom that make you feel really safe and comfortable, okay? So when you first get into bed and you're all snuggled up, what is it that gives you that safe, cosy, comfortable feeling? So I had a little think, and for me, it's my duvet. I love when you get your duvet and you pull it up around you and snuggle down. It's my dressing gown. That might sound a little bit strange, but there's just enough light in my room that I can see my dressing gown hanging up. So I always know where I am and when I can see my dressing gown. And actually, Steve, having someone there asleep does make you feel quite safe and comfortable. Okay? So when you've done that, I want you to think of some sounds, familiar sounds as well. All houses have their own sounds. What do you hear in bed that's normal? Normal for you in your house. It could be creaking floorboards. It could be, for me, the heating, because the boiler is under my bedroom, so it clicks on and off and I can hear it. Steve snoring, I would say gently or rhythmically, but sometimes it's like a steam train. And I hear the cat flap. The cat flap is under our bedroom in the kitchen, so I can hear the cat going in and out. They're my normal sounds. That to me is safe and it's normal, okay? You might hear your mum pottering around in the kitchen. You might hear the telly on in the lounge downstairs. It could be different. You could have older siblings that you can hear talking on their phone, whatever it is. But think of 2 or 3 things that for you are your normalness, your safety net, as it were, that when you're totally bewildered and you can hear these sounds and you're aware of these objects, you know that you're safe, you're comfortable, you're in your bedroom. Okay? So I'm going to give you the next sentence and then give you some time to do your own. So I'm going to start with this ing word because that's what I want in this sentence. So when you first open your eyes and it's dark, you can't really see, but things just start to come into focus, don't they? It's almost like they emerge. Emerge, yes, I like that, emerge from the darkness. Okay, so I'm going to start it like that, but I want an ing, so emerging, nice. Yep, I've got my ing, give that a little tick. Emerging from the darkness. Now remember, I'm writing about Connor now, not about me, okay? From the darkness. So I'm going to say was his teddy bear. Not just any old teddy bear, his familiar teddy bear, the one that's always there, was his familiar teddy bear. What else? I want two, I think, in this sentence. His duvet. I want his duvet, but I want an adjective to go with it. The things that go on beds used to be called comforters. That was an actual name for them. So I'm going to say his comforting duvet, and it's a funny word, D-U-V-E-T. It comes from the French. Okay, and I want a noise. So I'm going to say and. Back to a power of three. Three things: teddy bear, duvet, and I'm going to say, have you heard your radiator click sometimes when they go on? The reassuring click of his radiator. Right, let's read that back. Emerging from the darkness was his familiar teddy bear, his comforting duvet, and the reassuring click of his radiator. Yeah, I like that. It's starting to feel a bit more normal, isn't it? Not quite, we're out of this panic moment. We're back into, phew, it was all a dream. And what I didn't say at the start, and I know I forgot yesterday, was when we have our plot points, we would normally have our plot map up on the screen at school, and we would decide if they were positive or negative plot points. So I think yesterday, we didn't explicitly say it, but I think we'd all agree without discussing it that it was definitely a negative. It was a nightmare. So today, I don't know if you noticed on the first page, I did put a +3 because I thought actually we're moving back into positivity here. It's not hugely positive because he's still a bit shaken up, but starting to realise that he is back in the safety of his own home. Okay, so this is our second chunk, and I would like you now to build a sentence starting with your ing, your non-finite verb, if we're going to be posh about it, and incorporating your own familiar bedroom objects or aspects. They don't have to be an object. I probably shouldn't call him an object. Okay? It might be you share with a sibling. That might be what makes you feel comfortable and safe. Okay, pause me, come back to me when you're ready for chunk 3. Okay, today's final chunk, when you're ready for it. There's a clock. It's not a very exciting clock. You wouldn't expect me to draw anything terribly ornate, but there's a simple clock, okay? And we've got a really simple sentence here. Connor looked back at the clock that had not changed. Okay, there's no magical jiggery pokery in there. It's what we'd say is a bog standard sentence. Okay, now I want to add in a little bit more information about Connor, which is why I put that star there. I was like, yeah, it is just a bit boring, isn't it? I want a bit more. It's not short enough to be a short, snappy sentence, and it's not really long enough to be a particularly descriptive sentence. It's just in the middle. So let's add a bit more about Connor. So this is going to be a relative clause, okay? And when you've got relative clauses talking about people, they start with who, or they could also start with whose if you're talking about something that belongs to Connor. So whose can be quite tricky, but you would use it in everyday life. And that's the thing with grammar. Don't get caught up with the complexity of it. You use it without thinking when you speak. All we're doing is putting a name to it and making sure you use it when you write as well. It's nothing you can't already do. So my first idea was Connor, who was thinking about school. Something mundane, something everyday, something boring to take his mind away from his nightmare. He might have been thinking about his holiday. He might have been thinking about his sister. He might have been thinking about his grandma. Could have been thinking about anything. He might have been thinking about his new bike. But it's the kind of thing you do when you wake up from a nightmare to try and forget about it and just get back to normality. So that was one of my ideas, what he was thinking about. It could be Connor who was leaning against the wall. Connor who had his head under his duvet. Well, you know he hasn't got his head under his duvet though, because he's just seen his teddy bear. Okay, whatever you want it to be about Connor. And then I thought we'd better do a whose, even though it's a little bit tricky. That's no reason to step back from it, is it? We're going to rise to the challenge. So I thought, whose eyes slowly peeled open. You know, when you're kind of like, oh no. So it's whose. The eyes belong to Connor. Connor, whose eyes slowly peeled open. Okay. Notice it's W-H-O-S-E. It's not W-H-O''S, which is short for who is. All right, so it's very simple to tell them apart. So Connor, whose eyes slowly peeled open, looked back at the clock that had not changed. That would work, wouldn't it? Okay, so I'm going to be looking for a relative clause from you, a who or a whose clause. Right, I'm going to model one for you and then leave it to you. So I'm going to say Connor, and I'm not going to use either of those. I've got a different one that I'm going to use. And I'm going to say, who had leaned closer to the edge of his bed. Now notice I've put commas around my relative clause because it is a type of parenthesis, okay? It's extra information that we're dropping into the middle of this sentence. It's got to go immediately after Connor's name because it is a relative clause about Connor, okay? But we're dropping it in, we're embedding it in the middle of our sentence. We need to be able to pick it up and take it out and have our sentence still make sense as well. So Connor, who had leaned closer to the edge of his bed, looked back at the clock that had not changed. That sounds a bit wordy now. Connor, who had leaned closer to the edge of his bed, looked back at the clock that had not changed yet. Okay, that's a little bit clunky. I don't quite like how it flows. So how could I change the clock that had not changed? We talk about things being frozen in time, don't we? So I'm going to say frozen clock. I like that. Connor, who had leaned closer to the edge of his bed, looked back at the frozen clock. And if you notice, we could quite easily take out this embedded clause, this relative clause that we've dropped in, and it would say, Connor looked back at the frozen clock, and it still makes perfect sense. Okay, that's enough of me teaching. It's your turn now. And you are going to embed, you're going to drop into the middle of a sentence a relative clause about Connor looking at the clock. Okay, it could be a frozen clock, your choice. There's your model sentence to base it on. And then when you've finished, upload your work for me to have a look at, please. Okay, right, I will see you again very soon. Bye, guys.